Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of A to Z CFB, where we are going to go over the top 25 as we see it here, as well as some pretty fun news from what was a exceptionally exciting week of college football that we just had today. We have some top storylines of the week, along with our updated and slightly changed Heisman ladder. Um, and then a top 25 with a good slew of new teams. Some teams that had some very disappointing losses, some teams that had maybe some shocking wins. So we're going to talk about all of that here today on A to Z CFB. So stay tuned to get the full experience. All right, kicking us off, our storylines of the week. So, firstly, and we kind of got an answer to this, at least what the committee is thinking yesterday with the CFP top 25. But who will the G5 representative be? With the American cannibalizing itself, it kind of leads you to some other options, like JMU specifically, and one other kind of surprise team that we're going to talk about here shortly. But San Diego State was a team that was really high on my list, and they got slaughtered by Hawaii this week. And then you got, Tulane, um, Memphis, you got North Texas. But right now, the committee seems to be really high on South Florida, which I find interesting. There's almost a little bit of a level of group of five bias, especially towards the American this year, especially considering that last year the Mountain West was the unbeatable conference when it came to that, and Boise State was just viewed as far and away better. So I'm curious if this is just going to be a season by season basis, or if conferences will continuously be favored throughout their time. So who will they be right now? It's looking like South Florida, as long as they win the American, it has it just about wrapped up. But I think that teams like JMU should get a little bit of some stake here. Um, and the other team that I kind of wanted to highlight is I think there's a real case for UConn, 7-3 UConn to make the playoffs. I mean, they're playing about as good at football as anybody else in the country right now, especially at that level. They stumbled a little bit earlier in the season, but Joe Finano, their quarterback, 25 touchdowns, zero interceptions. He's playing incredibly right now, and they just had an upset victory against Duke, a team that could still win the ACC. So I'm thinking if you're looking at a team like UConn and Duke wins the ACC, I think that you're looking at a playoff team for sure. Then again, Tulane also beat Duke. So who knows? Maybe Duke just sucks. But I do think that there is a little bit of case to make for teams like UConn. I mean, three losses, very unlikely they'd make the playoffs, but they are playing some really, really good football down the stretch. Speaking of Duke and the ACC, though, that's gonna be our next storyline. There's a lot of trouble in the ACC right now. It seems like Miami is getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt at the moment, but I mean, you have like a one-loss Georgia Tech team that I think could absolutely make themselves known, and this Virginia team with Chandler Morris going down, I think absolutely should still be kind of in contention if they can still win. Like, I don't think you can really, you know kind of the same way that Jordan Travis a few years ago went down and it ruined Florida State's season. If Chandler Morris comes back and they fall right back into stride, I think that the second loss against Wake Forest, a team who was actually kind of this year had an exceptional defense at times. I think that this team should get a little bit of grace in there, and I think that they should be still respected like any other Power Five team. There's a lot of speculation, right? That if a team like Duke were to win the ACC or Pitt would win the ACC, that who knows, maybe the ACC just gets no bids this year and they go with two group of five teams, which I think would be a ridiculous notion and a crazy precedent to set, but still not impossible. Finally, the other biggest one is Brian Kelly suing LSU, or something still is happening there. So and I'm still not totally sure on the details, but it seems to me like he doesn't want to go out quietly, mainly because he knows that I don't think he's going to get another big job, or really maybe a job after this. Could be almost an Urban Meyer situation where he has such a bad reputation at the last place, failed so much with all these resources, now seemingly twice, right? His immediate successor at Notre Dame came in and just Marcus Freeman just came in and immediately took this team to the national championship and is now a threatening top 10 team to be in the playoffs. So I think that Brian Kelly suing LSU is more of just he doesn't know what to do with himself. All right. Storylines of the week completed. The Heisman ladder does have a little bit of change to it. Marcel Reed continues to remain untouched at the top. He had a little bit of a rough start, I thought, to the Missouri game, but ended up really honing it in later. He grows as the games grow, and I think that is really kind of a really impressive trait. Next, you got Fernando Mendoza. Although maybe he didn't have the most phenomenal game of his collegiate career, he still led a very very impressive drive to end the game. Obviously, as we all saw, they took down Penn State with inches and seconds to go, and that level of poise and to be able to keep himself composed even after taking a couple sacks on the drive is a very very impressive thing from this quarterback. Um, Finally, Julian Sayin. My first time I've really given him his props, and frankly, I there still is a part of me that thinks, you know, he's probably not even the person who deserves the Heisman on this list. Jeremiah Smith being one of my honorable mentions. Uh, but he's still putting up some pretty insane numbers, has an almost 85% completion percentage. It doesn't really matter who your wide receivers are. He's playing really, really good football right now. So this week, our honorable mentions are going to be Missouri, Memphis, North Texas, Tennessee, and UConn. I mentioned UConn really high, and UConn even mentioned Joe Finano in my honorable mentions for the Heisman this week. I mean, throwing 25 plus touchdowns with 0 interceptions. I don't care what level we're at. You're at the Division One FBS level, and you're throwing no picks in a season. Granted, he still has a couple games left, but throwing no picks up until this point it's impressive, and I think that is should not be overlooked. But number 25, that's going to be the Tulane Green Wave. They're new this week, not totally new to the list, but they had a really, really impressive win at Memphis under the lights Friday night. And with, Navy likely going to lose some of their last couple games, Tulane has themselves a great opportunity to win the American. And like I said, with the CFP committee showing a clear favoritism towards the American Conference, it seems like we might be in a situation where it's just the winner of the American is going to end up going to the college football playoff, despite if we see like a 12-1 JMU team. Speaking of the American, number 24, that's going to be South Florida. Again, they absolutely annihilated UTSA. New to this list, new to this week, not new to this list, 55-23. This is a team that just dumps points. They're a freight train, and they're really hard to stop once they get going. With Memphis and San Diego State losing, it's really just JMU kind of and their own hubris standing in their way. Number 23 is going to be the Pitt Panthers. They did not play this week, but they're on this list kind of for some teams that dropped off. They're sitting third right now and could absolutely threaten for the conference. And if either Virginia or Georgia Tech stumble down the stretch, this could absolutely be Mason Henschel's year as a true freshman, kind of setting them up for a couple years of some pretty unprecedented success for Pitt. I mean, they haven't won the ACC since Kenny Pickett, and it's a real possibility this year that they could come back and do that. Number 22, the Cincinnati Bearcats. Look, they did not play this week, and they're still hanging around the top of the conference. With a few more weeks to go, it seems pretty unlikely, maybe even mathematically impossible, that Cincinnati could win the Big 12. But in a conference that cannibalizes itself, they could still play a major role in the outcome of the season. Number 21, and my current pick for the group of five representative is going to be JMU right now. They're 8-1. They handled Marshall, a team that has shown a lot of promise this year, pretty well, 35-23. And in my opinion, they should be the front runner. Although, again, there is some level of American Conference bias. It's a little easier to justify some of these things in the group conference. Number 20, that's going to be the Michigan Wolverines. Look, they're continuously hanging around the top 25. I don't think they're good enough this year to make it to the playoffs generally. But again, they're one of those teams that if they hit their stride, or they're kind of hitting their stride down the stretch, I absolutely think that they could become again, a thorn in the side kind of team. Number 19, Miami. They put a pretty dominant victory over Syracuse this week. And they were heralded pretty well in the CFP bracket. And are right now, the top ranked ACC team in the by the CFP committee. Do I believe that they are? No. And they still need a little bit of help here in order to potentially make the playoffs. But they're probably the best shot the ACC has at an at-large bid. Should the rest of the conference finish out strong. Number 18 is going to be Oklahoma, mathematically out of the SEC, but they do have their biggest, talk about thorn in the side potential. They do have their biggest matchup of the year in Tuscaloosa this weekend. They will take on the Crimson Tide. And if they can pull the upset off, and again, they are a talented enough team to do so, if they can pull the upset off, that throws the entire season into a tizzy. Number 17, Louisville. What a pretty unfortunate loss to Cal. This is a team that, you know, we're seeing very much remnants of what Miller Moss did last year when he crumbled at USC. We're seeing him kind of crumble again in the big moments. And while I'm not going to say it was entirely his fault, and Cal is a good team, Jaren Kawe Sagapolu-Tele is one of the best young quarterbacks in college football right now. Louisville's gonna have to win games like that if they would like an actual shot at actually making the winning the conference. They're still a two-loss team, and their only loss is to the number 16 team, which I still have as Virginia. This loss, I think, is more forgivable, as I said a minute ago. Chandler Morris going down, them having to start their backup. It's tough for offenses to excel when you don't have the number one guy in, unless the number one guy is, a generational talent, right? They lost 9-16. They didn't have their guy. It was a tough loss. But again, Wake Forest is a very formidable defense and a team that has very quietly had themselves a pretty solid year for what Wake Forest is. Bringing in Oregon State's former head coach, I think that's a team that I can actually see, coming in and being a surprise midfield contender next year in the ACC. But I do think Virginia should still be one of the highest ranked ACC teams. Number 15, Vanderbilt, officially taking the all-time rivalry, all-time series lead against Auburn, 23-22-1, with this overtime 45-38 loss. Auburn is one of those teams that they're really talented and really good, but their coaching has not been up to par this year. Obviously, they fired their head coach. So I think that Vanderbilt being able to handle them in overtime is still an impressive feat, despite the fact that they continuously get beaten. Auburn continuously gets beaten. Vandy's an 8-2 team, and what they did really well this week was Diego Pavia spread the ball around. He had himself almost 500 all-purpose yards and 4 total touchdowns, getting 5 different Commodores in the end zone, with 3 of them having over 75 receiving yards. It was spreading the ball around. It wasn't just targeting one guy. And Diego Pavia played, I think, the best game he has all season. Number 14, the USC Trojans. They took down Northwestern Friday night. We all expected that. Put up a bunch of points. 38 points is not something to scoff at. And with a clear path towards some righteous condemnation, they still get to play Iowa and Oregon. If they win both of those games, we could absolutely see USC make a late season push towards an at-large bid. Number 13 is going to be the Utah Utes. Utah is quietly keeping themselves in contention. They have their 2 losses are to the highest 2 rated teams in the Big 12 and relatively forgivable. I think if there is a shot at getting 2 or more teams in the from the Big 12, which the committee seems to be allowing both Utah and BYU to stay threatening for those at-large bids, I think that Utah is the best shot we got right now, along with, again, number 12, BYU, who is 8-1, took their first loss of the year to Texas Tech, had actually the most respectable loss technically of any team. They lost by 22 points, but besides Texas Tech's singular loss to a good Arizona State team in Sam Leavitt's last game of the season before he went out with injury for the year, BYU only lost by 22 points. And again, outside of that loss, the singular loss that Texas Tech took, they hadn't beaten anybody by any less than 24 points. So, in some capacity, in Lubbock, Texas, with Patrick Mahomes and all the and College Game Day looming overhead, BYU held themselves in pretty well with a true freshman quarterback, and absolutely could have a rematch with Texas Tech down the stretch. Number 11, Texas. Texas is getting back to their element. They're making themselves a really strong case down the stretch, and they will always get the benefit of the doubt. But they do get Georgia and Texas A&M late in the season. Now, lose losses to them will hurt drastically. If they lose to both of them, they will not be in the playoffs. I don't care that they're Texas. I don't care if they're good games. They won't be in the a four-loss team, four-loss Texas team. Should not be in the playoffs. Now, if they can beat one or both of them, I mean, Texas has to be considered, right? Like not only considered, but it would be an expectation that a 10 assuming that they can handle I believe who do they play? Arkansas. Assuming they can handle Arkansas and they beat both Georgia and Texas A&M, a 10-2 Texas team with two top five wins absolutely deserves to be in the playoffs. And one of their two losses coming from the number one Ohio State. Um, Number 10, now cracking into the top 10, is going to be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They're back up there for me, a one-loss team. I think, honestly, I even was a little too harsh to them after their loss to NC State. But look, they found themselves right back in the playoff mix. I think they are absolutely a team that is talented enough to win the conference and make the playoffs. And if it's against Miami, I think that there's a real situation where Georgia Tech gets the bye, and Miami could still get themselves an at-large bid. Um, there's still the prospect of Virginia coming in and making a run. There's still Pitt making a run. There's a lot of teams still available to win the ACC, but right now Georgia Tech, especially if Georgia Tech can beat Georgia at the end of the season, you're looking at a team that could realistically find themselves with an at-large bid, even without making the college football playoff, without making the ACC championship. Number 9, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Look, they took their first two losses in the first two games of the season, and they have dominated since then, frankly. They have a top 25 win against USC. They just took down a now two-loss Navy team. They are in a pretty advantageous situation right now with the fact that a lot of these teams are struggling later on in the season and general recency bias by voters and probably myself. I think that Notre Dame is really hitting a stride at the right moment and will more than likely, assuming they don't botch any more of their games the rest of the season, be a have themselves as a playoff team. They still get Pitt, so if Pitt continues to play as good as they have been playing, that's going to be a good game. But Notre Dame, by my money, which I don't bet, but by my money, would probably win that game. Number 8, if there was a better team to put ahead of them, I'd put them ahead here. But Oregon, look, I've been saying this for years. When you go to Iowa, you play Iowa football. Kirk Ferentz has a very, very strict way of playing football. And when you go there, you play it. And you have to play Iowa football better than Iowa. And Oregon, at the very end of the game, did. They did. They played better football than Iowa. An 18-16 victory in Iowa City. They're going to make you put the ball on the ground and thug it out. And that's exactly what happened. Oregon came out on top. It was a good, gritty, hard fought victory, but I still need to. I just feel like Oregon hasn't done anything this year, and it's difficult because they were an early invite to the party. But right now, they're my number 8 team. They're probably going to be an at-large bid, and we'll see what they can do uh once they meet the immovable object. Number 7 is going to be Ole Miss. 9-1. They got yes, the classic warm-up game in the middle of the season that the SEC always wants to do, but they obviously stomped the Citadel Bulldogs, right? 49-0. We all expected this. Not too much to talk about, just a little bit of stat padding at the end of the season. Maybe get Trinidad Chambliss a little bit more of a Heisman case, but when we get the total stats at the end of the season. But that being said, I think that Ole Miss is still playing some of the best football and is They're number 7 in the country right now. They will be an at-large bid more than likely. Number 6, that's going to be the Georgia Bulldogs, 8-1. They beat Mississippi State in the Battle of the Bulldogs. They came out on top 41-21. Nate Frazier, 181 yards on the ground and a score. Gunnar Stockton was a man on a mission, almost 300 all-purpose yards and 3 more touchdowns in the air. A good amount of those yards coming on the ground. They, again, had kind of a slow first quarter, but then just proceeded to dump points the rest of the game. Georgia is not going to go far, though, in the playoffs if they cannot start games hotter than what they're doing right now. Number 5. Now we are into the top 5. Number 5 is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They're 9-1, but they do look just like a step above most teams, not even just in the Big 12, but which is again a very good conference this year, but in really everywhere. This is a team that I think can genuinely compete with anybody, and I think we're going to see that in the playoff because even if they don't win the Big 12, they should absolutely be an at-large bid. Number 4, the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is, not much changed in that regard. I think that if anything changed this week, it was that Ty Simpson didn't really play his best football, and they still came out on top. The Alabama LSU rivalry, death taxes in the Saban Bowl, right? For everything I heard, Tuscaloosa was just popping this week. It was. People say there's nothing better than Tuscaloosa during LSU week, and LSU hate week came to fruition. They made LSU bench Garrett Nussmeier, which I didn't really agree with, but still beat them 20-9. And they're fine. Alabama is just a couple games away from cruising into the SEC championship once again. Speaking of the SEC championship, the current one of the last few undefeated teams in the country, it's going to be the Texas A&M Aggies. 9-0, 38-17 win over a good Missouri team that has just seemed to not find their way this year. They continue their reign of dominance. I think they have the Heisman front runner, Marcel Reed, leading their team. Their rushing game, even without RB1, is still playing really well, and they have one of the best wide receiving cores in the country right now. That I think is just, they're a really really tough team to stop. Not to mention that defensive line is top notch. Off in the trenches, this might be the best team in the country. Number 2 is going to be Indiana, our first 10-0 team this year. They won 27-24 in a dramatic Penn State victory. We talked about this a little bit, but look, the Hoosiers have now advanced Kurt Signetti to 19-0 against unranked teams, while at Indiana, they could absolutely threaten for the Big Ten. And I think that even if they lose the Big Ten championship, they're still going to be a very, very good team in the down the stretch in the playoffs. Finally, number 1, we all guessed it, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They are 9-0 with a 34-10 victory at Purdue. Kind of started off slow. That defense wasn't great in the beginning. Kind of let Ryan Brown do whatever he wanted for one drive until they got to the red zone. They kicked the field goal, and Purdue did approximately nothing the rest of the game. Ohio State has about 3 or 4 guys on this team that could be considered for the Heisman. They have, arguably the best defensive and the best offensive player in the country, a Heisman contending quarterback. And really the only thing that struggles for them even a little bit is their offensive line. That is still probably a top 10 unit in the country. Ohio State is the team to beat right now. And at this point, dollars to donuts, they might be my pick to repeat this year. That is the top 25. If you stuck around this long, thank you very much. It's always so much fun to talk about these, to go, go to games and stuff. I'll be at a couple fun ones this weekend. I'll be able to see Louisville try to make amends with that loss last week against Clemson in Louisville, following that up with 100 miles of hate at Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee. So I'll see you guys there. Go follow along on TikTok. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and hope your team wins. See ya.